Sorry, yeah, I should have thought about it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really do.
Because it can be a lot standing up, so let's make it longer.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. All right. Happy Sabbath, folks. Oh, so today we have Isaiah part 3. I'm really looking forward to this one. And I gotta admit, the more that I look at chapters, so we left off in chapter 14, and we'll review it a little bit. But just as a reminder, and for those who might not have been here or gotten that, we we were really noticing, so we're moving and transitioning from God's judgment and hope for Israel and Jerusalem. So we're in chapter 14 of Isaiah, to moving into God's judgment and hope for the nations surrounding Israel, their direct enemies. And I did have a list of that. Let me see if I can pull it up. Oh no. I got to open up my document one more time. It closed. In my computer here. Okay. So we're moving into God's judgment and hope for the surrounding nations. And it's interesting because we start in chapter 15 and 16, and it's mostly talking about Moab. But Moab has a very complicated, and I mean, many of you might know this, maybe not, but they have a complicated past with Israel. I'm gonna pull this up because I don't want to just speak from the top of my head. I also had it right here too. Right. So those nations, by the way, that I was talking about from chapter 15, well, end of 14 to like 23, 22, 23 is Philistia, Moab. You don't have to write this down, but if you want to, Damascus, Egypt. We have 2 or 3 chapters about basically Israel, instead of going and asking God for help and relying on the Lord their God, they are seeking help from other nations. And God's taking away all of the chances and the help that could ever come from them and saying it's worthless to you. That's Damascus, Egypt, Duma, Arabia. Even Jerusalem is mentioned, I think, in chapter 21, and Tyre, various lands, and then in chapter 23, I think, we switch to the whole earth itself, or 24. But we're gonna cover all that. Let me get to Isaiah myself. Okay, I lost Isaiah.
On page 914.
Oh, thank you. There we go. That helped. I needed that. I needed that.
No, there are Bibles in chronological order and then they're all over the place. That would be kind of trippy.
Okay, so let me find chapter 14 here. Verses 12 through 15. 14, verses 12 through 15. This is not just explaining Lucifer. We know that this explains Lucifer, but just as a recap of what we were going over last week, this is also talking about the Babylon. Lucifer is the spiritual influence on, again, not just Babylon as that nation of that time in Isaiah's time, but Babylon as that comes up over and over and over again in history, and even a modern day Babylon, which we might be seeing with certain powers that are influenced by the prince of the power of the air. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens, I will raise my throne above the stars of God. This prideful, arrogant attitude that not just Satan has, but Satan influences the nations basically under his influence. And this is big with that we see with Egypt. Egypt is a lot like this, very prideful, as we'll read later on. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit. So Isaiah is proclaiming that there is a coming judgment against these nations that are like this. So we're going to start in chapter 15 and 16. They talk a lot about Moab. And I have my main message over here, and then I got some new stuff that I added for today. So we got a lot of good stuff today. So Babylon is not the only, it isn't that one nation or that one time period, but it does represent a lot of oppressive empires of the world even today. Now, the key verses starting in chapter 15 that we should definitely read is verses 1 through 3. And we'll read them and then I'll give you a little bit of an explanation as to which ones are cities. Some are cities, some are gods that they worshipped. So breaking in right here to 15 verse 1, a prophecy against Moab. Ar in Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. Ker in Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. Dibon goes up to its temple, to its high places to weep. Moab wails over Nebo and Medeba. Every head is shaved, and every beard cut off. In the streets they wear sackcloth, on the roofs and in the public squares they all wail, prostrate with weeping. So I did a little bit of research on this because I wanted to know, and maybe you might be wondering too, what are all these names? Why are they significant? Who is this? Who are we talking about? And the main thing that you should really get from chapters 15 and 16, they're unique to the other chapters, is how quickly they fall. And it talks a lot about it gives you a lot of historical reference so that you understand because these these places like let me just say Dibon. Dibon is modern day Jordan. So it's kind of painting a picture for you of where in the world this is happening. And Moab is let me see here. I'll just read this whole thing for you. So Ar and Kir are Moabite cities. They fall quickly, and in one night they're gone. Nebo is one of the ancient gods of Babylon and Assyria, and Medeba is an important city where a few historical events in the Bible, such as significant battles, took place. I think that's I don't have exact references, but I think it's in First and Second Chronicles. Certain battles took place right in Medeba. So Dibon was another city, and it also has the modern day, a very similar name, Dibon. So in our translations, it might be Dibon. In the modern day, in the I think it's a city in Jordan. It's Dibham, Dibon, which is in modern day Jordan. So the Moabites are fleeing from their country. So we're painting this picture that they're fleeing from their country in verses 4 and 5 of chapter 15. And they literally are running away crying in verses 4 and 5. Okay? Now the Moabites wail, they're wailing. The water dries up, the plant life is gone. We can read that in verse 6. The waters of Nimrim are dried up, and the grass is withered. The vegetation is gone, and nothing green is left. So God is taking away all of their blessings. And we're going to get to this in a little bit, but I want to I don't have the reference in the Bible, but I did some research on BibleHub.com about the historical reference of Dibon and the Moabite cities. And so, according to BibleHub.com, let me find my place here. So, the Moabites were descendants of Lot, Abraham's nephew, and had a complex relationship with the Israelites, marked by periods of both conflict and coexistence. And the city of Dibon is also mentioned in the Mesha Stel, an ancient Moabite stone inscription, which provides additional historical context to the biblical narrative that we're reading here. So you can look that up. The Mesha Stel is an actual archaeological finding that kind of connects history to what we're reading. It's very cool.
So Jordan,
Yes.
I have actually written in pencil here that R in verse 1, AR,
Mm-hmm.
R is a city in the north.
Mm-hmm.
Here is central Moab. And then you get down to the first city mentioned in chapter 16, Selah, is southern Moab.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a picture of they're quickly taken over from north, the entered at the north and descending to the south, but very quickly and entirely.
Yes. Yes. So thank you for mentioning that. This is not these chapters aren't just making uh you know naming random names. It's like you just said and you added thank you. It's quickly they fall, they are brought to ruin in one night, in the literal sense, from the north to the south. So that's very significant. Um and I think later on we'll read, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Um we might it might be here, but later on we read something about them being taken over not just by the sword, but being taken over by God's hand himself. And we really see that with the waters of Nimrim being dried up. That's not human work that's being done against them. That's God's power taking away life from that very area. So it's really significant. We're not just naming names here. It's really cool how that's going on. So, again, my key verses in 7 and 8. The Moabites carry their plundered wealth, with them, and their cries are heard until the borders of their territory. That's what we read in 7 and 8. But I have a question for you all. Now let's read verse 9. The waters of Dimon are full of blood, but I will bring still more upon Dimon, a lion upon the fugitives of Moab, and upon those who remain in the land. My question is, who or what is that lion? Are we thinking, is that a lion in the literal sense? Or we've heard Judah referred to as a lion, and as we're going to read later on in a few chapters, tribute is brought. Actually, at the end of chapter 16, a tribute has to be brought to the Lord on Mount Zion. So who's bringing that tribute? And it says not just Mount Zion, but his city, Jerusalem. So there is literally a kind of healing of that relationship by bringing a tribute. So is this lion just a literal lion, or is it maybe the Lion of Judah? I don't know. You tell me. So Dimon is a location mentioned in the Old Testament, specifically in the book of Isaiah, as we're reading, and it's identified as a city in the region of Moab, to be very clear. It's an area east of the Dead Sea, which was often in conflict with the Israelites. The name, as I said before, Dimon, is possibly a variant of Dibon, Dibon, which is another Moabite city that we just read about. So this is suggesting that there's either a textual variation or it could be a dual name of the same location. But either way, this city in Moab, Dimon or Dibon, was a very significant city. It was known for its strategic location and its role in the region's history. And as we read in chapter 15, verse 1 and 2, these gods, I want to make it clear, the god that they worshipped, Nebo, that one of their ancient gods, is a god of Babylon and Assyria. It's an ancient god of Babylon and Assyria. Okay. So breaking into chapter 16, verses 1 and 2, and before we go on, does anyone have any comments or questions about chapter 15?
Want to make one little comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just in verse 6, because you mentioned this, that the waters,
Mm-hmm.
that are dried up. And mine also says after that, surely the grass is tender grass died out. There's no green thing. It sounds like other words for like a famine that you often see, like, you see that God, like famine, he brings the famine things to
Right.
makes things happen, shakes people up.
Yeah. He's taking away life from the area, taking away his blessing. And I mean, it really does point to be something like a famine. Like they're going through something really tough here. And quickly. It's coming upon them quickly. So 16, verse 1 and 2. Send lambs as tribute to the ruler of the land, from Selah across the desert to the mount of daughter Zion. Like fluttering birds pushed from the nest, so are the women of Moab at the fords of Arnon. And when I read this originally, I was like, what is the ford of Arnon? Well, I did some research on that too. The Arnon is a river, and it is now known today as the Wadi Mujib. It is a significant geographical feature in biblical history. It serves as a boundary marker and a site of strategic importance. The river flows into the Dead Sea from the east and historically has marked the border between the territories of Moab and the Amorites. So the fords of Arnon refer to the crossing points along that river of Arnon, which were crucial for travel and military campaigns in ancient Near East. So that's what the ford of Arnon is referring to, these crossing points. Now, I wanted to read so we're in chapter 16. I wanted to skip down to verses 4 and 5. Let the Moabite fugitives stay with you. Be their shelter from the destroyer. So the Moabites have fled their land, and now they're seeking refuge. The oppressor will come to an end, and destruction will cease. The aggressor will vanish from the land. And it's what's really significant is verse 5. We should focus in. In love, a throne will be established. In faithfulness, a man will sit on it. One from the house of David, one who in judging seeks justice and speeds the cause of righteousness. Who is that referring to? That could be
The Messiah, I think.
Yeah.
It's an insight about the Messiah.
Emmanuel, the Messiah, the deliverer, who's bringing a new way of governance into the whole land. Now, this is no longer, we're moving from judgment to hope for these lands. Yes.
I would just like to point out that my translation in verse 1 doesn't say a lamb, it says the lamb.
New King James Version? Nice.
Tabernacle of David, so that's a tip off right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I know you're reading
NIV.
NIV. I don't know if that's a mistranslation in the NIV or if it's a mistranslation here, but it says, "Send the lamb to the ruler of the land from Selah to the wilderness to the mount of the daughter of Zion." And then if you're inferring even further along that we're talking about the one who will sit on the throne in the tabernacle of David, that's more messianic reference. So I'm guessing that this one.
So the NAS says, "Send the tribute lamb to the ruler of the land."
Which again, tribute
So-
lamb could refer to the Messiah.
It's because it's a sacrifice, right?
Sacrificial lamb.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, good point. So I was studying between King James Version and NIV, and I know there's definitely some differences, and thank you for pointing that out.
So, I, again, I don't know where I got that, but this is the history of it is in 2 Kings chapter 3.
Okay.
Apparently the Moabite stone gives an account of this in history. Anybody heard of the Moabite stone?
It's
That-
the one he was talking about.
Yeah, I think that's what
It's called a towel.
I think that's what was mentioned back here. I have it.
And they're appealing to Israel for help. Moab is fighting against Edom, and they're appealing to Israel for help.
Moab was the son of
Descendants of Lot.
Descendants of Lot, which is like, so they're kind of like
Cousins.
related, right?
Sorry?
They're like, they're kind of like
Yeah,
related.
they are.
They're like
They are, which is interesting.
It is interesting.
They're related.
Yeah.
And now they're so that the Moabites aren't running to Egypt, they're not running to these other nations. They're kind of running to their cousins right here. And that's interesting, because now they're coming back together to be under one household and worship under one God. So they're having a repentance, a rejuvenation of their belief and their worship. The Moabites are finding hope and salvation in God.
So,
And it was the Meshatel. That's the Moabite stone, the Meshatel. Yeah.
So if they're fighting Edom, though, they're also fighting against their cousins.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Family can't get along. And the reason why they might have been fighting might be in verses 6 and 7. We have heard in chapter 16, we have heard of Moab's pride. How great is her arrogance, of her conceit, her pride, and her insolence. Now remember, when Abraham and Lot were splitting the land, Abraham let Lot choose. And he said, take the land that you want, and uh, the descendants would be living in that land that Lot chose, which was the choice or the good-looking land. It looked appealing, and I think Abraham took the hillside. So that's an interesting thing. Maybe they were prideful because of all their resources, all their goodness or whatever. But for some reason, they were full of this pride. So how great is her arrogance, of her conceit, her pride, and her insolence, but her boasts are empty. Verse 7. Therefore the Moabites wail. They wail together for Moab, lament and grieve for the raisin cakes of Ker Hareseth. They were prideful. They became prideful, and they were fighting with each other. But another key verse here is at the end, chapter 13. Verse 13. This is the word the Lord has already spoken to Moab. And I don't want to get ahead. So I'll read from verse 10. Joy and gladness are taken away from the orchards. No one sings or shouts in the vineyards. No one treads out wine at the presses, for I have put an end to the shouting. My heart laments for Moab like a harp, my inmost being for Ker Hareseth. When Moab appears at her high place, she only wears herself out. When she goes to her shrine to pray, it is to no avail. Verse 13. This is the word the Lord has already spoken concerning Moab. But now the Lord says, within 3 years, as a servant bound by contract would count them, Moab's splendor and all her many people will be despised, and her survivors will be very few and feeble. So they're going from a wealthy, prosperous nation to one that is in famine and losing the lifeblood that's in their rivers and waters are drying up, their plants, their vegetation, so they can no longer sustain themselves, and everything that they've ever plundered, or all their splendor, as it's said in verse 7, will be despised. Any questions or comments about chapter 16? So they're being really, really humbled at this time. And quickly, within 3 years, everything is gone. Chapter 17. Now we start speaking about Damascus. And the key verses here are verse 1 and verse 7 and through 9. So we'll start in verse 1. A prophecy against Damascus. See, Damascus will no longer be a city, but will become a heap of ruins. The cities of Aroer will be deserted and left to flocks, which will lie down, with no one to make them afraid. The fortified city will disappear from Ephraim, and royal power from Damascus. The remnant of Aram will be like the glory of the Israelites, declares the Lord Almighty. We'll jump down to verse 7 here. In that day, people will look to their Maker and turn their eyes to the Holy One of Israel. They will not look to the altars, the work of their hands, and they will have no regard for the Asherah poles. Now, Asherah, I think I have this in my notes, but I do remember off of memory here. Yes. So let's continue reading until verse 9. I'll make a comment about that. They will have no regard for the Asherah poles and the incense altars their fingers have made. In that day, their strong cities, which they left because of the Israelites, will be like places abandoned to thickets and undergrowth, and all will be desolation. So now Damascus is getting their serving of justice and judgment. They're no longer a city. They're no longer fortified. They're no longer proud, especially. This is what the Lord hates, are the pride that they have of the works of their that excuse me of the works made by their own hands. They're no longer proud of that because it's been destroyed. Now these Asherah poles are referring to the wooden symbols of the goddess Asherah. This is a goddess that they were worshiping. Now we see in verse 10, this is their charge or their crime. You have forgotten God your Savior. You have not remembered the rock, your fortress. Therefore, though you set out the finest plants and plant imported vines, though on the day you set them out, you make them grow, and on the morning when you plant them, you bring them to bud, yet the harvest will be as nothing in the day of disease and incurable pain. Now we start getting into what their consequence is. They have reaped good things and they expect a good crop, but they're not going to receive the good that they were sowing. Verse 12. Woe to the many nations that rage. They rage like the raging sea. Woe to the peoples who roar. They roar like the roaring of great waters. People who are prideful of themselves, people who are happy about what they can do, what they are able to produce. Instead of, like we read in verse 10, they forget who their creator and who their savior is. Verse 13, although the peoples roar like the roar of surging waves, he rebukes them and they flee far away, driven before the wind like chaff on the hills, like tumbleweed before a gale. In the evening, sudden terror. Before the morning, they are gone. This is the portion of those who loot us. Now, Isaiah is speaking here. right? He's representing who? The Israelites, God's people. So this is what the people who are the enemies of God's people are receiving. The lot of those who plunder us. This is what they get. This is what they receive.
So,
Yep.
so this is Ephraim, I think, right? Doesn't verse 3 say it's fortified city will disappear from Ephraim? And I think Damascus is in Ephraim, right? Am I correct on that? So, okay. Just
Yeah, bordering Israel here. I actually have a map of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Damascus is to the east. To the west of them along the Mediterranean Sea is Tyre. To the south of them, Samaria. And southern more of that is Jerusalem. And then you have the province or the whole area of Moab. North of them is Assyria. So just speaking from Damascus location, north of Damascus is Assyria. To the east of Damascus is Babylon. So what do you mean by
Damascus is not in Ethiopia.
okay.
They are aligned with Ethiopia.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mm.
So what, I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. What nation are they? Damascus, what nation? Damascus is a city in Syria.
Syria.
Yeah.
Mm.
What was your point with that?
The Northern Kingdom.
I am just asking the question.
Yeah, Ephraim. So in my footnotes, it says Ephraim, the northern kingdom, is mentioned here because of its alliance with Damascus against Syria.
They both fall at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when the northern 10 tribes split, if you will, from southern, it's like they're kind of basically treated as an enemy because they set up idols. And basically all the things he keeps pointing to is like, they got foreign gods, and that's essentially what they did because they set up, what was it, that worship center in, like, was it Dan up in the north?
Yeah,
Mhm.
house.
They basically tried to take over the religion, and
Yeah.
he can't do that. And
Yeah.
that's what he's basically saying. It's not going to stand, and so that's why they're getting judgment along with these other nations because effectively they joined
Right.
in a way. So it's not about bloodline. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's not really a bloodline.
It's where your loyalties lie. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that's why they get theirs. um, so if we don't have any more comments for chapter 17, we can move to chapter 18. Chapter 18 is Cush. So first, this is interesting because chapter 18 is talking about a southern nation, is from what I can remember. We'll read it here. First, we send a warning to the people of a southern nation. Yes. So chapter 18, verses 1 and 2. Woe to the land of whirring wings. It's interesting how every chapter has it has a different, distinct way that it's described. Every land. This one is the land of whirring wings.
Think that means it has a lot of bugs, or
It could be.
a lot of birds, maybe a lot of seabirds.
Whirring? What?
I'm going more with insects.
Insects.
Really, I'm thinking of these flocks of birds.
It's not that pretty.
But do flocks of birds whir? Maybe. Maybe it's hummingbirds. I don't
We're
know.
talking about dragons here.
I'm assuming it has to do with like insects or locusts or something not good.
Well, whirring wings along the rivers of Cush.
So I have, as the title, Message to Ethiopia.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did see that before. Yeah, I did see that before. Were you gonna say something else? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's in my margin
Yeah.
Cush translates to Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is still it's North Africa.
North Africa.
Right.
So you only see movies.
Shadowing with wings refers to military prowess, power.
Mm.
Not.
Hmm.
That's suspicious. Okay.
What does it say in your version? What with wings?
Yours says
Shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay.
mine says woe to the land shadowed with buzzing wings.
Mine says worrying.
What kind of weapons they have?
Well, that sounds like
If you look a little bit further down in verse 6, they mention mountain birds of prey several times. Birds of prey.
Mm-hmm.
It could be birds,
What birds?
but I couldn't agree with this.
So you think it's a military prowess? So you think it's a military prowess, the luring wings?
It's a reference.
It's like a metaphor
Okay.
and an analogy.
Interesting.
I like the like. It's always cool to like think about what the language means.
Yeah. So you know in the movies when the Jeep drives in and I'll fly all the birds?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think of when I
Okay.
I don't know.
Very beautiful picture.
I'm thinking like Indiana Jones almost, like.
Doing over there.
I love it.
We're in church.
Mom's living her best life and then Indiana Jones fantasy.
So we're sending a warning to this southern nation in Cush. Verse 2, which sends envoys by sea in papyrus boats over the water. Go, swift messengers, to a people tall and smooth-skinned. And I can tell you for sure that a lot of North African people are pretty tall, but oftentimes Africans don't have very hairy skin because it's hot, and in a hot area, you don't grow as much hair on your skin. So it's very interesting. It makes reference to that, of smooth-skinned, to a people feared far and wide. So that might be talking of that military prowess that they might have. An aggressive nation of strange speech, whose land is divided by rivers. In verse 3, the Lord sends his signal. All you people in the world, you who live on the earth, when a banner is raised on the mountains, you will see it, and when a trumpet sounds, you will hear it. This is what the Lord says to me. I will remain quiet and will look on from my dwelling place, like shimmering heat in the sunshine, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. For before the harvest, when the blossom is gone, and the flower becomes a ripening grape, he will cut off the shoots with pruning knives, and cut down and take away the spreading branches. And can someone read from their translation what verse 5 says? Because I remember it saying something else.
Mine is New American Standard.
Mm-hmm.
For before the harvest, as soon as the bud blossoms and the flower becomes a ripening grape, then he will cut off the sprigs with pruning knives and remove and cut away the spreading branches.
Hmm.
Is that what you're looking for?
I'm looking for something more along the lines, and let me know if you see it there, about the unproductive shoots. Something that says unproductive. I thought I read that in the King James Version.
It's not in the old King James.
Okay.
Not in the New King James.
Okay. Maybe it was just something else. So he will cut off the shoots with pruning knives and cut down and take away the spreading branches. And what this is really telling me is that he's preparing for harvest. He's watching. He says he'll remain in verse 4, I'll remain quiet and look on from my dwelling place. So he's watching and he's pruning. He's cutting off shoots. He's cutting down and taking away spreading branches. It sounds like someone's preparing for a harvest. They will all be left to the mountain, birds of prey, and to the wild animals, the birds will feed on them all summer, the wild animals all winter. Yeah. For some reason, in one of the translations that I read, it mentioned prune the unproductive. I don't know, I guess you're not seeing that. But it was in one of the translations that I read. I guess it's not in mine. But that really stuck out to me. That he's preparing his crops for harvest. He's getting rid of that which is unproductive. And so, moving on, the people of that southern nation are to bring a tribute to the Lord on Mount Zion. This is verse 7. At that time, gifts will be brought to the Lord Almighty, from a people tall and smooth skinned, from a people feared far and wide, an aggressive nation of strange speech, describing them again, whose land is divided by rivers. The gifts will be brought to Mount Zion, the place of the name of the Lord Almighty. Of the Lord Almighty. So again, they're bringing a tribute also, just like how Damascus brought a tribute, Moab, they're also bringing a tribute as to sort of atone for their sins, for them not recognizing the Lord as their God. I find that very interesting. That each one of these chapters has kind of that idea sewn through it, of this tribute. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
I've always been mystified by a lot of this, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fully.
And this is what I meant to say earlier, is that like the more that I'm studying it and reading, I see there's so much that you can pull out of this. So maybe we'll have to come back and read over it again once I've had more research and study on this. But there's a lot of meat here. Definitely a lot of meat here. Now we move to Egypt. It's very interesting. In Egypt, we'll read verses 1 through 7. So there's a coming civil strife. There's cruel and oppressive leadership, and their industries are going to fail because God is going to dry up their waters and shrivel all the plant life. Seems to be a recurring theme of taking away the life that's in these nations. Starting in verse 1 of chapter 19. A prophecy against Egypt. See, the Lord rides on a swift cloud and is coming to Egypt. The idols of Egypt tremble before him, and the hearts of the Egyptians melt with fear. And if you know anything about the Egyptians and their love of their gods, it's very important to them. So we're describing the idols trembling before God, and the hearts of the Egyptians melt with fear. So they're now being humbled. Their humbling is coming. Verse 2. I will stir up Egyptian against Egyptian. Brother will fight against brother, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. The Egyptians will lose heart, and I will bring their plans to nothing. They will consult the idols and the spirits of the dead, the mediums and the spiritists. I will hand the Egyptians over to the power of a cruel master, and a fierce king will rule over them. So there's that oppressive leadership that's now coming in, and their hearts being hardened to oppress their people. They they rely on their gods, and their gods fail them. They don't answer them. They don't provide them any help. Verse 5. The waters of the river will dry up, and the riverbed will be parched and dry. Verse 6. The canals will stink. So maybe that's referring again to a sort of famine that's coming into the land. There's going to be garbage. I mean, have you ever seen videos of Indian rivers in India being just full of garbage? And there's even some in China. Rivers.
Have you ever smelled swamp?
I think so.
They're
Yeah.
nasty.
Like that.
It's a horrible, horrible odor.
Yeah. Just full of muck and death. The canals will stink, the streams of Egypt will dwindle and dry up, the reeds and rushes will wither, also the plants along the Nile, at the mouth of the river. Every sown field along the Nile will become parched, will blow away and be no more. And this happens a lot actually in Africa. So Egypt is in Africa. This happens a lot where they do too much farming, over farming, and the land loses all of its nutrients, and then that's how you get dust storms. That's how we had the Dust Bowl in America, was not farming correctly, and then the land falls apart. So because of foolish leadership, their land Sure. Their land is going to fall apart because of their foolish leadership and because of God bringing his curse basically upon them. Okay. So together with Assyria and Israel, Egypt is going to worship and honor the Lord. Now, where do we see that? I believe that starts in verse.
Actually, one more thing.
Yeah, sure.
I guess the only other thing I want to mention is isn't the Nile like the biggest river in the entire world?
Not
Longest?
longest,
But
okay.
either way,
But it's
I
very
mean,
wide too. Yeah.
pretty impressive it's going to be dried up. I mean,
Mhm.
basically it's saying it's going to be dried up.
Mhm.
That's a lot of dry.
Mhm.
That's all.
Yeah. Just kind of reiterating here. Now, what I said about the civil strife, the oppressive leadership, their industries failing, that's especially you see that from verse 8 to 11. And we'll read a bit of verse 11 real quick. The officials of Zoan are nothing but fools. The wise counselors of Pharaoh give senseless advice. How can you say to Pharaoh, I am one of the wise men, a disciple of the ancient kings? Where are your wise men now? Let them show you and make known what the Lord Almighty has planned against Egypt. Let's jump to verse 16. We'll read 16 to 25 because now we bring their judgment. Isaiah is talking about God bringing judgment upon them and now moving to their hope. In that day, the Egyptians will become weaklings. They will shudder with fear at the uplifted hand that the Lord Almighty raises against them. So now they've been humbled, and the land of Judah will bring terror to the Egyptians. Everyone to whom Judah is mentioned will be terrified because of what the Lord Almighty is planning against them. That's really significant. That now this little nation of Judah is able to take over a huge, massive empire like Egypt. In verse 18, in that day, 5 cities in Egypt will speak the language of Canaan and swear allegiance to the Lord Almighty. One of them will be called the City of the Sun. In that day, there will be an altar to the Lord in the heart of Egypt, and a monument to the Lord at its border. It will be a sign and witness to the Lord Almighty in the land of Egypt. When they cry out to the Lord because of their oppressors, he will send them a savior and defender, and he will rescue them. So the Lord will make himself known to the Egyptians, and in that day they will acknowledge the Lord. They will worship with sacrifices and grain offerings. They will make vows to the Lord and keep them. Has Egypt ever been like this? Do we know of a time when Egypt has ever been? So this isn't fulfilled yet. This is a coming prophecy of a time where the nature of these people is going to be changed. That have like Greek mythology gets so I don't know, just ingrained, thank you, into their culture that's who they are. You think of the Greek mythology and Zeus and all that. Imagine that being turned on its head. These are people who, like that, have been like that for thousands of years, worshiping other gods. And now, in the heart of Egypt, it says in the heart of Egypt, there's going to be a place where they can cry out to the Lord their God, where their heart and their nature will be changed. That's amazing.
You have in verse 23 the word highway.
Yeah.
In that day there will be a.
Yep, I do too. Yes.
Okay.
And I've been thinking about that. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the peoples of Israel and the tribes of Israel seem to really be scattered all along the east throughout all these nations. And now we're finally making a highway to bring them back to Zion, right? we're making this highway to bring them and to give the ones who they've been living under a chance to come to God, to come to Emmanuel, and to have one true Savior, to come to the Mount Zion. So we're getting there. So we were just at the end of verse 21. They will worship with sacrifices and grain offerings. They will make vows to the Lord and keep them. Just like how Israel has made vows to the Lord, but they've broken their vows sometimes. Some they've kept, some they've broken. Now Egypt is making vows to the Lord and keeping them. Verse 22, the Lord will strike Egypt with a plague, and he will strike them and heal them. They will turn to the Lord, and the Lord will respond to their pleas and heal them. In that day, there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt, and the Egyptians to Assyria. And there can't be a highway unless there's peace, unless there's some kind of coexistence. So the Egyptians and the Assyrians will worship together. In verse 24, in that day, Israel will be the third, along with Egypt and Assyria, which we've read before, especially between chapters 1 and 12, being one of the main aggressors. That was it, yeah, right before Babylon. They were the main aggressors to Israel before Babylon. Babylon takes over and becomes the main aggressor. Now we have Egypt, Assyria, and Israel as the third, will be a third, along with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing on the earth. Verse 25, the Lord Almighty will bless them, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, my handiwork, and Israel, my inheritance.
So if you look at a map, it goes Egypt, Israel, Assyria. So if you got a highway between Egypt and Assyria, Israel's in the middle. And so it brings the level of wealth to Israel because it's right smack in the middle of this highway.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a great point, because Israel is now the strategic place. It becomes a place of wealth, being right in the middle of these two great nations, these two empires. A good point.
So that's interesting
Mhm.
for sure. I think there's also a spiritual significance to I mean, the Holy Highway is mentioned a lot of places. This far future where they're all his people, I think might also refer to as spiritual bringing of his people to himself.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Okay. Now we get into Egypt and Cush. But this chapter 20 is a little bit different. It is short, but it's a little different with the language and how we're going about this. So let's break into it. Let me make sure that I'm. Yep. The main point of chapter 20 is that shame needs to be brought to Egypt and Cush. And we're going to read that. So, chapter 20, verse 1. In the year that the supreme commander sent by Sargon, and actually, how long have we been going for?
1 hour.
An hour?
Well, 54 minutes.
Did you already turn on the?
No, I just preheated the oven.
I think you can go now to get it ready. I'll speak loudly so that you can hear me. In the year that the supreme commander, sent by Sargon, king of Assyria, came to Ashdod and attacked and captured it, at that time the Lord spoke through Isaiah, son of Amos. He said to him, take off the sackcloth from your body, and the sandals from your feet. And he did so, going around stripped and barefoot. Isaiah was literally naked. He's prophet of God. Why do you think Isaiah was naked? Because God told him to. You just do it without question. So as we're going to read, this has a lot of spiritual significance and it represents something. It represents these nations. This is how they're about to be led out. Verse 3. Then the Lord said, just as my servant Isaiah has gone, stripped and barefoot, not for a little bit, but for 3 whole years, as a sign and portent against Egypt and Cush, so the king of Assyria will lead away stripped and barefoot the Egyptian captives and Cushite exiles, young and old, with buttocks bared, to Egypt's shame. Those who trusted in Cush and boasted in Egypt will be dismayed and put to shame. In that day, the people who live on this coast will say, see what happened to those we relied on, those we fled to for help and deliverance from the king of Assyria? How then can we escape? So it puts that fear and that kind of trembling into, well, there's definitely no hope with if we go this way, if we go trusting in Cush and trusting in Egypt, because look what they've been brought down to. So that's why. And let me see if I have any more notes on that. There's a really, really important significance to destruction not being enough. It's not enough just to destroy their land. That's not what God wants here. He doesn't want to just bring destruction, but he wants to make an example out of Egypt and Cush. He wants to go a step further, not just get rid of them, but he wants to make an example and show his sign of his power, and especially put Egypt and Cush, prideful nations, to shame. Any questions or thoughts? Yep, go ahead.
I don't know. We just read the chapter before where there's this highway between Assyria and Egypt, and then of course they were talking about there were going to be Israel and Assyria and Egypt. They're all going to be worshiping God together. So and then it also seems like okay. So then we read in 20. Well, Assyria's going to come in and go bang and hammer on Egypt. So it's interesting that just the chapter before, there's like this kumbaya situation.
Yep.
And now there's like this,
But
he's
chapter to
using one arm
chapter,
against another. And it seems like what's happening, because at least in the previous chapter, he's trying to get them to realize that they have to rely on the one, the Messiah, and not on their armies, basically. So they're trying to. I think they're trying to see the futility of it all. Like, oh, they come down. We can't rely on. We can't do this by our own hands, basically, because we're trying to make all these alliances, and the alliances are failing. None of that's working. But in the end of it, the end of it, God's going to have His way. And His way is they're all going to be worshiping Him.
yes.
So I think we all agree that it's not chronological. We just read the far future, and now we're back in the present, right? Is that, I think typically, when we did the whole punishment, hope, the hope is the far future, the holy highway, basically. So we did present, future, present, future.
Right. It's that heartbeat
Yeah.
that's going with it literally, like Isaiah has a heartbeat. It's a living book. It's crazy. Jacob.
Earlier, a couple chapters ago, where they said something about a land to the west divided by rivers. Was that talking about prophecy, or was that then?
I think it was talking about then, because we read about the river of Arnon. Yeah, okay, no, I know what you're talking about. Cush, right? It was Cush, a land of rivers. The southern land.
I thought it was west. You said western.
West? Well, the one that's described, well, I don't know. It's a little confusing then, because the nation that's described as being split up by rivers is in chapter 19? Nope.
It was earlier.
Yeah, 18. Unless we're talking about Moab, which is split or has the Arnon River. Could be. Debone. Demone.
It says, "Woe to the land shadowed with buzzing wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The world was
yeah,
different.
Yeah.
That's true. It was structured differently.
So who was
I'm sorry.
coming to them? Who was it that was coming to them for help?
Who was coming to who for
Yeah,
help?
so chapter 18, verse 1. Alas, O land of roaring wind, which lies beyond the rivers of Cush, which sends envoys by the sea. Who is so goes with messengers to a nation tall and smooth. Who is the nation going to them?
Might be Israel. It might just be the allied countries or the of Cush, the countries that are allied with Cush. It. Who did we say? Damascus. Let's see. Yeah.
Instead of guessing. The expositor's commentary states that it's possibly an alliance with Assyria, which
Mm-hmm.
falls more into alignment with where I think Jacob's going in this concern. Like this section, we're dealing with like Egypt, Ethiopia / Cush, Assyria. They're all in like this linear area around Israel. And this goes also back to what Trish was saying. We have the prophecy of destruction and then also the prophecy of hope. So it's kind of like remember what we were talking about this morning, almost like a bipolar look at like the areas going on. You have like absolute utter destruction, and then you have this little bit of like there's gonna be a completely different thing, and it's the highway and peace and all that stuff that honestly probably won't come until like the kingdom era.
Yeah, far future time.
I have trouble believing that these nations will stop fighting anytime soon.
So we can say without assumption that the neighboring countries. So Israel is at the center here, but the neighboring countries, the surrounding countries of Israel, have alliances with each other, and especially ones that wanted certain protections. We know for sure how Israel and Jerusalem asked for protection from Assyria to Egypt. Where did they get that idea? Well, other countries were probably doing it. Other countries like Egypt has an alliance with Assyria. Who's the big power at that time? Is it Assyria? Is it Babylon? You want to be, buddies with that country that's that empire of the time. You don't want to be on their bad side. So, yeah, thank you for adding that context. It would make a lot of sense for Cush to be, if Cush and Assyria are in the same time, they would be buddies. Try to be friendly with each other and bully the country that they think they can take the most advantage of, which would probably be Israel. So does that give some context? You feel, is that what you're talking about?
Oh, I was gonna ask if that was prophesying something with us because we're land divided by rivers. I think.
That's an idea.
That's a deep one, Jacob.
That's
But I was
hot, Sarah.
off. I think because
Well, we should put ourselves in their shoes, right? To not to make assumptions or anything, but we should put ourselves in Israel's shoes. We should think about, there are world powers and empires right now. Some are good, some are bad, but we're literally allying with some not so great countries just because they're powerful, and we don't want to be on their bad side. Dave.
So I don't know. some time ago, a few years ago, I had a question kind of similar to this, like, who are all these people? Well, in Isaiah, you come across this term a few places where it's called "and the coastlands." And if you look at the coastlands, the setting of this has to all be centered kind of around the geography, at least how the story's told around Israel and the lands around it. But the coastlands is like the rest of the world. It's like way far away, distant places. They're the coastlands. So I would say, we would be the coast, even though we're not really technically the coastland, but we're distant from that story where they're being told right there, perspective. So we would, like Australia, would be the coastlands. They'd be far away from this area.
Right.
That's how I understood it. There's lots of, there's several times it's mentioned coastlands.
Yeah, the coastlands are interesting in Isaiah. I remember asking my folks about, well, what is all this coastlands that you're hearing? And they took it as coastlands. When Isaiah says the coastlands, which I'm sure you'll get to it, this is that.
Yeah, it's in the next few chapters.
God will become the God of everyone, all the way to the coastlands, right? So, yeah, I think maybe do you think that so I see a couple just general principles that we can grab onto here. One is that you want to rely on God and not your powerful alliances with anyone else.
Yes.
And two is that God will rule in the end from Jerusalem, and everyone will come and serve him. I think is a pretty powerful message, universal message that we can take away from it. There might be more, I don't know.
And to go back to Jacob's question / commentary, it's quite possible that not only was this past prophecy, that it's also future prophecy, because God likes to do that a lot. Like, almost everything in the Bible has a duality, or I don't know what the right word would be for, like, even more meanings than that. But, like, you could possibly be correct in the fact that, like, God likes to use dualities in life. And, like, history repeats itself. Well, history repeats itself because it was made like that. Like, we're going to keep seeing the same things over and over and over again until the kingdom comes. Just different players.
I look at it a little bit like he specifically caused these things to happen, recorded them in a way, because he says, I think in Isaiah, I'm telling you what's going to happen ahead of time. So that when it does happen, you're going to realize that I did, basically. Yeah. And he does that over and over and over again. He does it on the individual level in stories in the Bible. He does it on the nation level. He does it on, throughout the whole Bible. He basically takes people's lives and then tells a story with them. And then later they come true. And you're like, who can do that? I mean, it happened thousands of years before. How can this person's life tell a story about the Messiah that happened thousands and thousands of years? It's because God did it on purpose. Yeah. So you would know that he is God and has the ability to do that. And that's exactly how I read these stories. So it's like the duality is that, at their time, they read this, they go, okay, we kind of know what's happening here. There's going to be some fighting, there's armies coming in. We knew that there's going to be some heat. But we look at it in our time and say, okay, we know that this hasn't happened fully yet because we know the history of the past. There's more to it. Yeah. The more to it's coming because we can see like how that's played out in other passages even before that where it played out, and we're still waiting for some of them to play out. You see what I mean? That's kind of how I see it. It's really fascinating and encouraging to see how God has framed history to serve his purposes.
And one of my favorite examples of this is when Jesus goes into the temple and reads that passage from Isaiah, and he's like, on this day this has been fulfilled, but like he misses the rest of the verse. And that was entirely on purpose. Yeah. Because he was showing that, like, this is happening right now, the rest is coming.
There's more.
There's always more, and that's also awesome.
So this is such an interesting idea that history keeps repeating itself. And I've been thinking about why do things oscillate? Why is the entire creation made up of oscillations? Up, down, up, down, up, down. So just for example, think I was talking about this to you at your house. So the Earth is not orbiting the sun in exact ellipse. It's precessing, right? It's in and out, in and out, in and out. And if you look at from everything from a particle to a baseball, when they're moving, they're not moving straight. They're oscillating up, down, up, down, up, down. And we're just surrounded by oscillations up, down, and that is something about creation. And
Yeah.
we as people do the same thing. We do this whole, we trust somebody else, we trust God. Or I should do it the other way. We trust somebody else, we trust God, we trust somebody else, we trust God. That's why it makes it a universal principle. Don't trust somebody else, trust God. And it will come around again and again and again because we are people and we oscillate in that way. And so that's why the hope is.
Can I make a
God
comment?
knows- Yeah.
I just want to make a comment on what you're saying. It's almost as if God is saying, I've reminded you over and over and over again in this book that I've given you what I want you to do, but now I'm going to do it in your life so that you can see over and over in history that I am God and that you are my people, you are my creation, and I've created you in a way that I know you intimately, and I know exactly how you're going to be, how you're going to be influenced, what you're thinking.
It's not even just on a broad scale of people in general, it's on a personal scale of everybody in their life has moments of up and down where
Yeah.
God reminds you, hey, this is where you should be and versus where you go, and it goes up and down too. Like it's it's so amazing how intricate it gets with how God has orchestrated everything. It's not just huge, it's also in the little things too. Like it goes through everything that exists. It's really
On the huge macro level and the microscopic level.
each and every person was.
Well, theoretically, as you get closer to your end in this life, you should have that wave should get closer to God. Like you should have less dips and more God time because we're learning and we're growing.
So to speak, be in a rhythm with him instead of off key trying to do your own thing. And we were talking about this a few weeks ago. It's that process of I want to do it myself. I want to take care of it. I think I can do it. And then, no, I need to let go and allow God to trust Him. So, back and forth. Let me do it my way. Trust in God's way. I'm going to try to do it my way. Push and pull.
Yeah. But hopefully, like you're saying, an
Mhm.
upward trend.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
Hopefully, we're in an upward trend.
Theoretically, as you're moving, you're getting closer in the Christian walk, at least in this walk. You're supposed to, and you want to, get closer to God through that. It does not work for everybody, though.
If you look at the history of any country,
Mhm.
you'll see the oscillation within the generations. So you'll have a very humble side generation, stoic, who knows what they're doing, but they're very humble about it. And then their children aren't quite so humble. Oh, we need to go the other way. Aren't quite so humble, and then those children, have the children that are dingbats and they're even less humble. And then a great calamity occurs because we need to be humbled in order to go back up and serve God. And you can see it in every nation. So, you think about it, it's a generational thing because they don't know. Down here, they've forgotten and now they need to remember again because they're not listening to their elders.
Yes.
And then they need to go back up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're getting close.
Yep. I was just about to say last comments and then we should wrap it up. So, I don't really have much else to say because I don't want to keep going to the next thing. But yeah, it's been a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. That's what makes the message great.
It's nice to have everybody's thoughts together. It's cool.
God is using history and showing us no matter who's in control, He's always in control.